everybody, and welcome to Musicus by Overdrive and published by MangaGamer, who was kind enough to give me a copy of this game. Came out a little bit ago. I'm a little late giving this up, but it's been busy. I've been working like hell last few days. But yeah, so this is Musicus. It's by Overdrive. It's funny because on the Steam page, it's like from the makers of Go-Go Nippon, and I'm like, well, yeah, they made Go-Go Nippon. They also make Gear Drops and Kira Kira, which I played for the channel. I loved it. But yeah, the other, the two other music games that they've made. But no, they had Go-Go Nippon. All right. But it is on Steam. Those games aren't on Steam, so it makes sense. But anyway, currently on sale right now for I think $40-ish. Normally $44.99 on normal price. So let's get right into it, shall we? I love them music games. They're so much fun. Not games, not music games, music visual novels. How I missed this. Which I don't like when games do this. Give me a text box on the bottom. I don't like when they overlay the entire screen. But, what can I do, right? The white lace curtains sway gently in the wind, giving the sunlight a comforting tone. The smell of my whole grain toast with butter and my organic coffee from a local cafe melded with the room's clean air. An aroma like this roused me more than any sound or sight could, and it alone would make for a wonderful morning. But this morning there was something in the living room robbing me of that pleasure. Hey, can you turn the TV off? I asked her as I buttered the last corner of my toast. She's cute. Oh my goodness. So, for those of you who don't know, Deer Drops and Kira Kira both had H scenes in them, which are adult scenes. I'm assuming this game has it as well. I don't know about the Steam version. Probably not. Usually they're kind of censored, but I mean, there's been crazy stuff on Steam lately, so who knows. But I want to say it's censored, and you probably have to get a patch if you have the Steam, which I do. The look on her face was one of giddy anticipation, but I had no idea what fun she could have found in it. There was a morning news show. Hang on. Where's my options button? Or whatever. Later. At the long table on screen, everyone seemed to have impressive titles on their name cards, like professors and whatnot. Yet I highly doubted any of their jobs related to the kind of gossip and news anyone was capable of commenting on. I only very rarely, and by chance, saw these kinds of shows. But apparently today's contents had some bearing on our family, and my mom was intent on watching it. The political news segment had just ended, and the celebrity gossip segment was starting. Oh boy. What on earth did she find interesting about this? It was like she was a little girl waiting for her favorite actor to come on screen, despite it being about her husband's unfaithfulness. It was beyond me. The actor's husband's unfaithfulness, not our mom's husband's unfaithfulness. While I had trouble wrapping my mind around it, even more aggravating was everything about my dad, who was about to be the topic of the show. Oh, good or bad? Never mind. Never mind. Maybe our father is cheating on our mother. What an asshole. Just as the caster finished opening his line, a middle-aged man's face appeared on screen. I wanted to avert my gaze from that familiar face. What? My mom bounced up and down in her chair. It was her husband and my father, Shusaku Tsushima, a doctor with his own practice. My grandfather was a doctor, and like many sons of the family, my dad followed in the footsteps at first, but went down a fairly different path eventually. He had gained fame here and there on TV for his endearing and cool way of speaking, completely unlike a typical doctor. He even had a small role in the drama, and me being cynical about the whole thing, I saw it as a chance to rip on him, yet even I found myself a bit taken aback by his acting skill. He was some ignorant samurai with his hair done up, making a flagrant request to a servant, and he nailed it. I don't know how they did that casting. It was like he was born for the role. There was no way in a blue moon his father, who dedicated his life to medical research, would have ever done this sort of work. It all started when they called him on a variety show to give his doctor's opinion. His extreme way of speaking was just so incongruous to a medical professional, like he was insulting the community, yet somehow the performance landed him loads of TV work. It's like Ken Jeong, the Asian guy, you know, he played Chang in Community, if you've ever seen that show. He's actually a doctor in real life, which is fun. I want to see none of it, if at all possible. It was embarrassing for me to see my own father on TV with nothing positive to say. Now, his primary work seemed to be TV personality, and you would think he was shirking his responsibilities as a doctor. But his TV appearances had actually increased his clinic's revenue, which makes sense, you know? So even as I threw my fists up in anger, I had nowhere to slam them down. It was really eating at me. The world of television wasn't simple or kind. But this kind of success spoke to his innate talent. Maybe I needed to recognize or even respect that. I mean, the guy's a doctor and an actor. Two very difficult professions. But deep down, I desperately wanted to criticize his selfish ways. I couldn't, though. I remained strangely indifferent. I was living off his income and wasn't in the position to preach to him. This would have been plenty of motive to move out. I was uncomfortable being under his care. And I did seriously consider it sometimes, but twiddling my thumb as the days went by, not having any concrete plan, maybe spoke to my lack of independence. Also, in addition to the typical problems of institutionally, educated kid, I had another reason I had to bow to my parents and relatives. And it would eventually be time for me to talk about it. How about now? On the other hand, my dad had nothing tying him down. He had his own condo in the city. The guy's a doctor. He can get a job anywhere he wants, right? It's one of the great, one of the great reasons to get in like the medical profession is that you can get a job pretty much anywhere. He claimed they needed it in order to balance his TV and doctor work, and my mom heartily proclaimed, "Okay, honey," but it was obvious to me he wanted to get back into his youthful freedom. Before long, he stopped visiting, and sure enough, he was having an affair. The girl was a 21-year-old model who was also on television. They met on a quiz show that she was helping host, and my dad was in as a contestant. You're like weirdly like calm about all this. Like you're not pissed off at him. It's like I don't get it. Why are we even watching him? I don't know. I'd just be like, I don't even want to see this person ever. As the picture on screen changed to a smiling shot of the girl in question, my mom tilted her head as she spoke. No, Mom, you're by far the strange one here. Yes, it was a bit strange that a middle-aged guy with thinning hair could land a beautiful young girl, but how could she watch this unfold and just sit there smiling? Thank you. The game is finally saying what we're all thinking. Man, we got a lot of books. Oh, those might be movies, yeah. Perplexed by that, I plopped some ham on my toast and took a bite and washed it down with some coffee. It was usually a tasty combination, but today it was kind of bland. My mom loved and trusted my dad. I knew that. My dad was pushing it. But he respected my mom, and at the end of the day, he loved her. And I knew that too. May not have been their son's place to comment on it, but it was their issue, I mean. I knew that too, but something about it felt wrong, and I just couldn't come out and say it. As usual with these stories, I had a shot of them coming out of the condo and what was written on the tabloids. Everyone ate it up. There were surely dozens of more important news stories, but, whatever. Who cares, right? They're really milking it. I'm done. I finished eating and left my mom with her eyes glued to the screen. It's a nice couch. It's a nice room. Nice and clean. I like it. I'd kill for a minimalistic look like that. Didn't have anything else to do other than attend school today. I did my usual independent morning studies, then accompanied my mom for some lunch and shopping and studied in the afternoon until I had to leave for school at about 6:30 p.m. Oh, we go to night school. What I'm going to have to do here in the fall, because I work during the day. Yeah, it really sucks to have a full-time job during the day, because, it's really hard to take classes, too. Because a lot of them, just aren't available, in nighttime. It's a shame. At least here. My school was called Koya Academy, and was a name anyone in my prefecture knew. But it was mostly known for the activities of the full-time students. In fact, most had no idea there was a part-time course as well. I was a student at the part-time course. After all the full-time students had left, the part-time classes started in the same classrooms. Same in name and facilities, but full-time and part-times were just entirely different beasts. Obviously, in terms of academic skill, but the school ceremonies, field days, and such were also held separately. We had the same uniforms, but we weren't required to wear it. In fact, we were encouraged not to wear it after school hours since it could attract trouble. Okay. Although there were a handful of students who wanted to have the typical student experience, so they did. People generally wore their street clothes or a blazer similar to a school uniform, and some even came in their work clothes right after a shift. Quite different from a full-time school with students from the same cut, we were all over the place in terms of age and stage in life. The student body was comparatively young, but still had some stretching well into their 20s, and even one who was 32. I'm 33. I don't look it, which is a good thing. I'm aging gracefully, as I remind myself. Other part-time schools have even older students, apparently. They all had their reasons for not being able to attend classes during the day. Some had household reasons, others emotional or psychological, but there wasn't one of us who didn't have some obstacle to normal education. And I, not being an exception, had an obstacle as well. I used to go full-time, but I quit, and well, here I was. And the decision to do so was all on me. I was never the type to disagree with my parents, but having up and quit like that, I was even less of a position to do so. And my dilemma of wanting to say something about my dad's affair, but being unable to, was in the same vein. Well, at any rate, part-time and full-time classes were in leagues apart. I came here during last year's first semester, and that had been over a year now. The difference was night and day, literally, in both ways. Coming to school at night itself was weird, but seeing students in their 20s go off to smoke at break time was shocking. Seeing a single mother have to bring her baby with her was nothing I was prepared for. Not to mention the drop in attendance as days went on. The dropout rate was high for part-time students. Some students who couldn't deal with the regular school wound up here, but ended up dropping out anyway. Others couldn't quite balance their day job and night classes. The teachers here were all passionate and did their best to help us get our diplomas, but things just didn't work out for some students, and they couldn't quite follow through. It was just the way it was. Everyone had their own lives, and they chose their own path. If they decided to quit, then, well, no one could rightfully stop them. Yeah, that's the difference between college and high school, you know. In high school, you know, if you don't go to school, you know, school calls your parents, and, you know, they get all pissed. But in college, no one cares, right? You paid for it. If you don't go, you know, it's whatever. You're wasting the money. You know, they don't care if you don't want an education or not. And that's what's hard, because a lot of people ditch classes, and once you start skipping classes, it's real easy to just keep skipping classes. So it's just like really hard, you know, once you get into that habit, you know, that lazy habit of not going to school. I had my own insecurities and worries, but it was never to the point of wanting to quit. Something about the school had really kind of grown on me. What was that? We'll find out. There's a girl. She's cute.
Konbanwa.
Konbanwa. That means good afternoon in Japanese. I changed into my indoor shoes at the entrance, and a girl with short black hair greeted me. Oh, evening.
どうしたんですか? ぼーっとして.
Huh? Oh, I'm the same as always.
そうでしたね.
She giggled unconvincingly.
ちょっと待っててくださいね.
All right. She was lively as she hurriedly took off her white sneakers. Due to the momentum as she bent forward, her shoulder bag launched over her head, almost knocking her off her feet. I quickly caught her by the shoulder. Her body lurched toward me, and I could smell her shampoo, as well as a tinge of sweat.
すみません.
She blushed bashfully. Aw. Don't have to rush. I'll wait for you. I'm not going anywhere. She was like a little squirrel, always scurrying around. I rolled my eyes as I reassured her. She nodded and sat down to take her shoes off, slowly this time. She was Yako Ozaki, same year as me. She might find it odd that she referred to me as her senior, despite us being in the same year, but it wasn't like I was the type to force my classmate to address me like that. In reality, she was my junior at one point. During middle school, I was in Kendo Club, and so was she, but a year below me. I entered high school full-time, but because I quit midway and enrolled in this part-time school, I lost a whole year. Became straight here out of middle school, so we ended up in the same grade. She worked the register at a nearby supermarket, and after she finished her shift, she came here. Her supermarket job started at 9 in the morning, and at the earliest she left school, At 9 at night, if you had an extracurricular in there, it'd be 10 o'clock. Her whole day was occupied by work and study. Yeah. Not kidding. Kind of like me. Ugh. But she never seemed down at all. She was always quick to give me a chipper hello. Her family wasn't wealthy, and she had to contribute to tuition and household expenses. That was the reason she couldn't be a full-time student. She was younger than me, but a person that I truly respected.
すみません、お待たせして。
She inclined her head, slightly ashamed after she got her indoor shoes on. Don't sweat it, let's go. We walked side by side to our classroom. We didn't bother talking about what happened over the weekend. I knew she was busy with work. Sunset had started, making the lower sunlight shine directly through the window. It had seemed so bright in the evening. The aluminum frames of the windows and pins used in the posters on the wall reflected the light so vividly. Even Ozaki-san's hair shone as she walked next to me. If every day this kind of shine, I felt like life had just plenty of hope after all. Students studying part-time had to live like bats, but the morning sun wasn't the only beautiful thing in the world.
どうしたんですか？一人でうんうんと
I
う
was
な
just
ずい
agreeing
て。
to myself, as I often do. Ozaki-san tilted her head as she looked over at me. Oh, it's nothing. I quickly averted my gaze in embarrassment.
先輩っていつも何か黙って考え事してますよね。やっぱり頭がいい人っていろいろ考えてるんですね。
I don't know about that. I daydream a lot. Come on, I'm just thinking of something stupid. Oh, sorry. Oh, man, it was dying. It was no way I was telling her I thought the evening sun was beautiful. It was corny. She'd think I was lying. What? What's wrong with saying that? Come on. You think I was lying? The sun's actually really ugly. If I was thinking of something more exciting or pressing, I wouldn't have time to look at the scenery, but I couldn't stop admiring it. It made me forget everything else on my mind. Maybe I was genuinely tired.
そうですか？
She held her inquisitive eyes on me. I escaped by speeding up a bit, but she trotted right back up to me.
おめでとうございます。
What? For what? Congratulations. Nothing noteworthy came to mind as I rubbed my chin.
詩の小説の賞です。ほら、副賞を取ったじゃないですか。
Oh, that little thing? Oh, yeah. That's what you mean. I cringed and puckered my
未来
lips.
ちゃんが市役所に行った時、張り出されてるのを見たって。
How did she now? Ozaki-san was referring to the Gonjuro Shinoda literature contest. Gonjuro Shinoda was apparently an artist born in the city, but I'd never heard of him. Either way, to commemorate the 50th anniversary of his death, the city put on a Gonjuro Shinoda literature contest. I wasn't trying to kick off my career as a novelist or anything, but there was some prize money, and the story would be featured in the city news. It was just over some small local contest, but I submitted a story I wrote over winter break last year and took runner-up. If that was all, then I'd have been genuinely happy, but the story doesn't end there. Runner-up means that there was a winner too, and that happened to be a girl younger than me, and the icing on the cake, she was a student at my previous school. It wasn't as though I knew her personally, and if I wanted to, I could find her through an acquaintance. However, knowing that I'd be compared to her, my motivation went away. So that's why I hadn't made a big deal out of it, but I was still happy. I remember pouring my heart into it, and regardless of the rank, I was happy my work got a positive response. What's wrong with second place? Nothing wrong with second place. At least we did something. At least we entered the contest. I feel like society recognized me for something, not for a task imposed on me, but an endeavor I undertook on my own. Fine for a simple hobby. It was like a little boost to my life. It was a good way to judge my modest accomplishment, but even that pleasure was dashed before long. Oh? It happened not long after. I sprained my wrist in the waiting room of the orthopedic clinic. We did sprain a wrist in the waiting room of the orthopedic clinic. In the waiting room of the orthopedic clinic, because we sprained a wrist. I saw an article in the newspaper about the girl who took first place. I was like, wow, they did an interview with her? Despite having nothing like that myself, I figured people wanted to hear about the winner, and he was younger than me, not to mention cute, which I am not cute. I told myself that while ignoring the growing prickling feeling in my gut, I read on, only to be shocked by what was written. Admittedly, I knew nothing about the girl, but I figured that, like me, she must have liked novels and put some serious effort into her submission. But according to the interview in the paper, the girl liked movies and TV and barely read at all. And after hearing she could win money in the contest, she wrote a story in a single weekend, with almost no proofreading or editing, and she just felt, quote, so bad for all the other people who tried so hard after I just whipped something up, or maybe I don't, teehee. What a bitch. Despite her languid attitude about it all, she already had offers from publishers and was currently working on something new. This would put her on the literary map. Oh, that sucks. You know, you work so hard and, you know, you get second place, which is good, but then you need to know the person who wins, like, doesn't care and just kind of throw something together, and it's like everyone's praising her. You know, it's like, damn. I started to feel sick as I thought about I had food poisoning and my head was throbbing. The orthopedic surgeon was almost worried I had come to the wrong place. The world was a dark and cruel place. It's not fair, no matter what people tell you. Hard work does not equal success. It does not. Luck. This plays a big part in what you can achieve in life, and that's actually very true. If you're in the right place at the right time, success may come your way. No matter how passionate I wasn't better than a whimsical girl who saw the whole thing as a joke. But wait, maybe her smugness was because she was aware of her talent. Maybe that attitude was proof of her genius. Still couldn't swallow it, which is why I decided to pretend that it never happened, and because I never told anyone, if I just climbed up, that would be the end. Okay, got it. I never wrote a story. I never sent it. Following, I didn't lose anyone, and I didn't flip out over it. Cool? Kei Tsushima. Delete all this from your memory. Somehow my self-brainwashing had worked. I'd started to forget.
すごいですね。さすが先輩ですね。
Sato saying the chatterbox had seen it. That undoubtedly meant everybody in class already knew. I didn't want to step foot in the classroom, but it was too late. I was already standing in front of the door with my head at my side. Turning back now would seem way too suspicious. I could already hear voices inside. I just hoped they weren't talking about me. Escape wasn't an option now, though. I psyched myself up enough to step inside, and everyone turned to look.
あ、来た。
Oh, oh.
よう、作家先生のお出ましじゃないか。
Two students sitting on the desk surfaces of seats in the middle of the room called out to me. There was still time before class started, though there weren't many other students. Evening. I pretended I didn't hear that horrible title he gave me as I casually walked past him to my seat to put my stuff down. But they weren't about to leave me alone. They came up to my seat as if trapping me in conversation.
水臭い。どうして教えてくれなかったのよ。
The blonde-haired girl snarling playfully at me was Mirai Sato.
いやー、同級生から芸術家が生まれるなんて、俺すげえ嬉しいよ。
The big buff guy laughing with his arms crossed was Ryuichi Murata. They were both my classmates, if you couldn't tell. Thanks, but it's really nothing worth fussing over.
相変わらず透かしてるね。
I know. Sato-san hung her shoulders. She was the same age as me and always had a proper school uniform on. The eldest daughter of a big family, she took care of the household duties for her busy parents for a whole year before realizing she wanted a normal student life. She looked flashy, but knew how to take care of people, being a big sister to so many siblings. One flaw she had, though, was her tendency to get angry or excited over the littlest things.
何言ってるんだよ。すごいじゃねえか。そういう時は素直に喜べばいいんだよ。
Sociable and cool with an earring that swayed when he laughed, everyone in class called him Ryu-san for his first name. I think he just turned 21. His arms weren't enormous, but obviously toned through labor, and you could see part of a tattoo just beneath his sleeve. It was no mystery he was popular with girls with his chiseled face and physique, and, of course, his bright personality. However, he was actually married, and recently became a father. Oh wow. He was an infamously wild ruffian in his hometown and didn't bother going to high school or working, but he soon got his girl pregnant and married her. Perhaps it was a blessing in disguise. It totally changed him, and he started working at his father-in-law's construction firm, who then encouraged him to enroll in his part-time school. Because no one wants to work construction for their whole life. It's awful. It was clear he had never actually studied before coming here, and his tests were always either average or below passing. I could tell by his reactions what his score was when we got our tests back.
先輩は昔から本をたくさん読んでましたからね。勉強もすごくできたし、先輩にとっては本当にこんなの大したことじゃないんですよね。
Yeah, sure. I wouldn't exactly say that. Let's be realistic here. Izaki-san always went overboard with the compliments to the point where it seemed like I had an inflated ego. I awkwardly denied it, but Ryo-san jumped in.
そうか。俺はまともに一冊読み切ったことさえないよ。あんな文字だけの本の何が楽しいんだ？しかも読むどころか自分で書くだなんてさ。どんな頭の構造してるんだよ。
Before I could cobble up an answer, Sato-san started.
そうは見えないけど、対馬って本当だったらここにい
You
る
seem
のが
like
お
a
かしい
fun
から
cast
優
of
秀な人
characters,
間なんだ
right?
からね。
At least so
腐っ
far.
てもエリートなのよ。ねえ、ここに来たこと心底後悔してるでしょう。自分は私たちみたいなのと同じ学校に通うような人間じゃないって内心で思ってるんじゃない？いくら学校をクビになったからってさ、あの学校に入れたんならここよりもっといいとこ行けたはずなのに、どうしてここに来たのやら。
You glad with a teasing smile at me, but I didn't talk about myself much. But my previous school and that my previous wait, I didn't talk much about myself much. But my previous school and that my dad was a doctor somehow spread around. At the very least, they didn't connect the dots that the Shusaki Tsushima on TV was my dad. Well, they had their suspicions, given it's a rare name. I just played the fool when it came up, and somehow they all bought it. The morons. I don't think that at all. I slumped in my chair.
そうかな。まあとにかく隠さないでよね。賞を取ったのもう1ヶ月も前みたいじゃない。どうして教えてくれないのよ。
教えてくれなかったから拗ねてるんだよ。こうぐちぐち言われたくなければ今度からすぐに報告するんだな。
Hirose cracked a big smile.
そんなんじゃないけど。でもおめでとうね。見つけた時は本当にびっくりしたわ。はあ、
Sato-san heaved a big sigh after she spoke. Thanks. I gave a little smile back. Not like I was hiding it for some weird reason, it was just hard to say. Girl 1 was in a lower grade at my last school. I figured I'd just get it off my chest. They were just happy for me, and I was starting to feel stupid for being upset.
へえ、じゃあそれでジェラシー感じてたわけだ。
She ate that right up. Yeah.
対馬はプライド高いからな。
She slapped me on the shoulder.
まあ副賞がそんなに嫌なら一番を取れなかった残念会でもする？みんなで慰めてあげるよ。後輩の女の子に向けてかわいそうって。
I mean, we're not sexist. We're just jealous because she's younger and more talented. But she doesn't care about it, which is the worst part, you know? If she cared about it and she put in hard work, it'd be different. Shut up. If you're gonna tease me like that, I won't return your thing, and I even fixed it.
治ったの？
I did. Working.
預かり物って何ですか？
チビがゲームを壊しちゃって電源が入らなくなったから
We fixed the game
島に
machine?
直してもらお
Oh
う
man,
と
that's
思って
awesome.
預けてたんだよ。
まあ
Of course, a request like that would come from you. I looked online and it's a common problem. It was easy to fix, but don't think I'm gonna fix all your stuff from now on. I reached into my bag as I spoke and pulled out her game system, then gave it to her.
ありがとう。やっぱ対馬っていいやつだよね。
I know. He pranced up and down in glee. Geez, of course, sorry about teasing me. Oh, Ryu-san, here. I then pulled out an envelope for Ryu-san. An
あ
envelope?
りがとう。助かるな。
What is it?
リュウさんも何か頼んでたんですか？
人気のコンサートのチケットなんだけど、
Tickets for a
そうしない
concert?
と取れないって言
You
うか
can
ら
buy them
取って
online.
もらったんだ。
Why can't he buy them? Does he not have a computer? Or a phone with modern online capabilities? He snickered and scratched his head a little embarrassed.
もうなんで2人ともそんなことを先輩に押し付けるんですか？いくら先輩が優しいからって何から何まで 先輩には大事な勉強があるんですよ。
Felt like she needed to stand up for me.
いやー、俺ネットで予約とかよくわかんねえからさ。
You seem genuinely apologetic, but on the other hand...
あら恐ろしや。制裁殿がお怒りですぞ。
Sato-san just poked fun as usual.
未来ちゃん、
Oh, come on now. I try to subdue her anger. You don't have to get mad like that. Take a second to get the tickets, and as for the game, well, it definitely wasn't my forte, but I learned something new researching about it. It was a good break from the norm.
でも
そうだよ。人生には回り道が必要だから余計なこともした方がいいんだよ。特に対馬なんか誰よりも回り道が好きだから来なくてもいいのにこんな学校にいるんだし。だから文句言わないの。
I mean, it kind of hurts hearing that from you.
ごめんね。でも頼りにしてるからね。
I had no idea if she was actually apologizing or not. With her hands together in front of her face, I just sighed reluctantly. As we continued our chat, the rest of the students filed in one by one. Maida-san, who was a single mother, always exhausted. A chubby guy, Takahashi-kun, who had enough of the bullying at his last school. Ryoka-chan, who detests studying, and they all heard from Sato-san and talked accordingly. Class size has shrunk so much, I was basically friends with everyone. The whole hierarchy and clique culture of normal school was kind of absent here. Sato-san was a total chick, but chatted with the mellow, nerdy Takashi-kun about her latest manga like it was nothing. I love that about this class. I think it's a big reason I was able to deal with quitting my last school and continue coming here. Only a split second before the start of class, the last student, Kaneda, finally showed up. Yeah, that's about right. Even in this school, which was easy on the dress code, he stood out. The sides of his head were shaved clean for his huge-ass mohawk. His body and clothes had metal hanging all over. His thin body had tattoos on an almost tribal level. His angular features were accentuated by a mean stare, which just sharpened beady eyes' attitude. He was not a guy you just forgot, okay? He always came a second or two before class started or during, and I've never seen him once at an extracurricular stuff. Also absent a lot. Despite this tight-knit class, he never opened up to anyone. Even if you talked to him, he just kind of glared back with his beady eyes. During breaks, he went off somewhere alone and always reeked of smoke when he came back, but Ryo-san said he never sees him at the smoking area. He talks to no one, so he's a mystery to all of us, with obviously no intention of fitting in. He does little in the class and has poor grades. We thought he would drop out almost immediately, and it bewildered everyone he was even still here. I gathered he must have some unseen objective. Kaneda entered the class without making any eye contact and sat in his usual spot in the very back. Our primary teacher then came in. Being the first day back after the weekend, there were a lot of absences. This was everyone minus the 6 that were absent. A total of 14. Last year there were 20, apparently. I added 1 head when I transferred, which meant a total of 7 had quit since the start of the course. It wasn't unique. This was pretty standard dropout right here. It was unpredictable, too. Some people who were gung-ho suddenly stopped coming, and on the other hand, some dropouts didn't come as even a slight surprise. I wonder where they went after they quit. I mean, those students who came here are sort of the last resort. I mean, where did they go from here, you know? And being in this room meant for a class of 30 or more, I felt a little empty. Some time ago, there were 3 classes open for new first-year students, but after so many dropouts, there was just a single class for a year. Even adding up all the students here for all 4 years, it was only about as much as there were in this class. New entrants were falling each year, and the part-time course itself was in danger. It seemed to be a nationwide phenomenon, too, so it's not just here. With more or less the same responsibility, people were switching to online education, which is what I do currently, personally. I love online education. It's weird, because I never took an online course before COVID hit, and you know, with COVID pretty much forcing online, a lot of people hated it, but I kind of started to like it. You know, I have the freedom to kind of work as I please. It's nice having that option. You know, I don't have to physically drive to school every day or every other day or whatever. Nice. People were switching to online programs, and the part-time program's popularity was waning. And then, with more than half the seats empty, our class began. After first period, it was our dinner break. By the time next period started, it was pitch dark outside and the school grounds were silent. Our teacher's lecture from the podium served as a few students' lullaby. Honestly, I also had trouble focusing. I studied on my own basically all of what we reviewed here. As my grandfather desired for his son, my father fully intended to make me a doctor as well. So I had been educated for that purpose and was well aware of the goal myself. After I quit my last school, though, I thought I'd burned that bridge. But with no clear goal, I resumed my studies. It wasn't as though I disliked studying, and I knew it would put my family at ease if I started again, so I used as much time as I could to study. I know studying alone is inefficient, but even still, I had gotten my practice exam score back to the same level as before I quit. As the reality of getting into college had become apparent, my family started suggesting I get a tutor and attend cram school. Also, my uncle, who always seemed to drop by constantly, suggested I quit my current school.
経もいろいろあったが、まあいい経験として人生の肥やしになったじゃないか。ここでまた元のコースに戻るべきじゃないか。
He was my dad's younger brother, and while not a doctor himself, he managed a company that dispatched tutors. He was the most aggressive in his encouragement of me returning to full-time status. If I quit, he said to get me an exceptional tutor, and he was almost annoyingly persistent. And truthfully, if I thought only about my education, I should take him up on the offer. Even if I didn't go to school, I could still get into university with the right certifications. If I used my time on more valuable education, it wouldn't be impossible to get into my original first-choice college. But a part of me refused to submit. It was true I felt a connection to this class now, but that wasn't all. I mean, school itself was a transient phase, and there was no need to keep it up if you were foregoing other potentially better options. But even that wasn't the real reason. Did I want to just go back to my previous life as if nothing had happened? I had really committed to that goal and studied my brains out, now that it was almost within reach. Why was I hesitating, right? I came to the school straight up, met such a different people, and came to know such a different world. And it slowly hit me that there was so much I didn't know about our world. So, should I just go back? Back to studying to be a doctor? I mean, is that my purpose as Kei Tsushima, my purpose in life? I mean, what the hell is life anyway, right? It's embarrassing to bring it up with people, but this is the state of my mind right now. The way I toiled over that short novel and how it actually garnered a result might be relevant. When I was writing, I felt something was leading me, and I'm still on the fence whether I should be pleased with my work or not. Either way, if I tried to open up about these thoughts to someone, they would just say to go study and get to college. Obviously, my relatives would proclaim as much, but even these people in my class still likely say the same. But I knew I couldn't swallow that answer. Sometimes Sato-san just jumped up in his dead class and shouted, "I want to be in a class on the edge of the world." He had a real palpable regret about dropping out from the typical student route, and that's how it materialized. When I heard her say that, I didn't really know, but I had an epiphany. I think I might have been curious as to what the edge of the world really meant. I couldn't focus on class and glanced over at Ozaki-san sawing logs next to me, which means sleeping, by the way. A thin strip of drool was about to drip from her parted lips. He'd been at work all day, and we had all just come back from dinner. She couldn't help it. I would have gladly let her rest, but I knew how much she wanted to keep up with the material. I tapped her firmly, and her shoulders shot up. She then looked at the drop of drool that fell on her notebook. She murmured as she awoke, and then quickly covered her mouth with her hands. Aww. She nodded to me while mouthing the words. I nodded in understanding, then looked back to the blackboard. Where are we at on time? 39 minutes, okay. Extracurricular stuff was usually held after class. But there were so few students, we didn't have actual clubs, but rather a rotating set of 2 different activities each day, and we would choose which one to join. Some people didn't join because of work or buses or trains they needed to catch, but I always tried to. I would usually end up being at school until 10. Today, though, the teachers had some kind of meeting, so there were no activities planned, making my return a little earlier today. Which meant that everyone was leaving school at the same time. Sato-san, Ozaki-san, and I walked abreast along the street to the train station. It was a residential street off the main highway, lit up only by the occasional passing car. The nights were still chilly in April, and I buttoned up my jacket. Ozaki-san's light coat was also zipped at the top. Sato-san had a long sweater on over her uniform, and only her fingers emerged from the cuffs.
学校生活も折り返しちゃったな。最初は本当に学校なんか通えるのかと思ってたけど、なんとかなるもんだ
No,
ね。
it's not so bad. She squinted at the approaching car as she spoke. You think it's a little too soon to be thinking about graduation? She snickered at my remark.
対馬も言うね。まだ辞めそうだってことかな。でも残念ながら辞めないよ。うちのチビたちも大きくなってきて、
Homework is easier
前
because
より
all the
楽に
kids
な
are
ったから
bigger.
ね。
I'm not
だから
really sure I follow
学
that
校
one.
出
of
た後
thought.
のことも具体的に考え始めないといけないな。
Have you got something specific in mind? I mean, what do you want to do after you finish? I posed the question.
特にないけど、漠然とどこかに就職するんだろうなって思ってたんだよね。でも最
Grade
近
schools
は
are good.
専門学校で資
I think
格
there
取っ
should be a
て
larger push
手
for
に
trade
職つけ
schools.
るのも悪くないかなって。中卒より選択肢が広がったのはいいけどさ、今までは選ぶ余地なんかなくて、何でも決まっていたから考えることが多すぎて、もうめんどくさい。
Ozaki-san giggled at Sato-san's irritated sigh. What are you gonna do, Ozaki-san? Keep working at the supermarket?
学校出たらお給料上げてくれるって言うし、このままでも不満はないんですけど、せっかくだし別の仕事を探してみてもいいか
Retail
なって。
sucks. I work in it now. It sucks. Get out while you can. Get something better. It's good to make some extra cash or whatever. But man, just don't rely on it for your whole life. It really does. It's really awful. People are awful people. That might be better. I think you're capable of a lot more.
そんな、私いろんなことなんて。でも先輩がそう言ってくれるなら自信になります。
She smiled shyly as she looked down.
あなたこそどうするつもりなの？
Me?
そうよ、選べることの多さだったら私らなんか比べ物にならないくらい多いじゃん。家でもたくさん勉強してるんだし、何か決めてるんでしょ？
When I graduate, huh?
お医者さんになるの？それとも小説家になるの？
An author. Either of those would be very easy to become. I mean, you just become a doctor, right? It takes years and years of schooling and then years more of residency and fellowship and all that stuff. Whatever. I slumped my
希望
shoulders.
よ希望。どうしたいかって聞いてるの。
All right, aspirations helps. We can do that. Sato-san looked directly into my eyes. Oh, is this a choice? We have choices in this game? Oh, that's amazing. I think I'll go, because Kira Kira was, I think, well, there were choices in it, right? There had to be, because there's routes in that game. I just don't remember any of them. That's okay. I think I'll go to college. That's what I've been trying for, and I need to get in the first choice school. Well, do we need to get in our first choice school? I don't think we do. I've been studying hard to get into college, but to be honest, I'm starting to entertain other avenues. I think that's fair. I mean, we have been trying to go to college, though, right? Yeah, let's say we go to college. We're trying to go to college. I went ahead and said it. I knew saying anything else was unforgivable. I had already invested the time, and my grades were improving. I had more or less regained trust after quitting my last school. It just wouldn't be acceptable to abandon that and do something different, regardless of what I thought.
きっと先輩ならどこの学校でも受かりますよ。
I don't know about that, but he nodded
やっ
confidently.
ぱりそうか。きっといい大学行くんだろうね。あなたの前の学校ってほら、メイ付属なんとか。
She tilted her head and put her finger to her lips.
まあとにかくうちの全日制と同じかもっと頭いい学校だったよね。はあ、
Aww.
結局元の場所に戻るってことなんだろうね。住む世界が違うんだ。あ、もしお医者さんになったら料金安くしてよね。
Well, I can't make any promises about something so far off, and I don't think doctors just get to decide medical costs like that. Sato-san's shoulders drooped sadly at my response.
ま、羨ましいことだわ。はあ、
He then sighed. Future. Concept I often think about. I gave them my answer, but it was far too complex a question for just a simple answer. I knew my family would be relieved if I went back to my old course, and it wasn't like I absolutely hated the idea. It would be good in its own way. When I decided to quit, I went to tell my grandfather as well as apologize. Unlike my dad, he was a stern, strict person. In place of my dad, who would mostly just joke, he would give me pertinent advice. He always cared for me, reading me books when I was little, tutoring me. He always told me I resembled him, and I knew he had high expectations of me. He was the happiest of all when I got into high school. It was so hard for me to say I was quitting on my own, dashing his hopes for me. I couldn't look him in the eye. Head unkind, I told him everything I had supposedly done. Things I'd actually done. He was the only one I confided in. I never confirmed or denied anything to anyone else. I just thought it would sound like an excuse. I wanted to tell my mom, but I couldn't bring myself to. I don't know what compelled me to tell my grandfather, and I was attached to him since I was little. The distance between us may have been the perfect level. I'm sure somewhere deep down I wanted to open up to someone, I wanted to reveal what I was truly thinking inside. It's good to have someone you can confide into. After I finished still looking down, he spoke.
かっこいいじゃないか。見直したぞ。
I lifted my head up at the unexpected words. He's probably like, "You're following your dream, and that's all we can ever ask." He sat in his usual way of leaning forward with his elbow on his knee, propping his chin up, smiling kindly at me. I can't know if that's honestly the way he felt. He may have been trying to console me when I was feeling down. But those words hit me hard, and at a time when I was enduring the rest of my family's negativity, I wanted to cry. I quickly lowered my head again, not wanting to show my tears. My grandfather then continued talking.
学校のことなんか気にするな。些細な問題だ。いい機会だから、自分の人生を見つめ直すといい。何かしたいことがあるなら、それにかけるのも人生だぞ。
Good advice. Those words left their mark on me. If there's something you want to do... I had mulled over those words a great deal since then, on the train, during a bath after dinner, before bed, so on. But I couldn't find any follow-up. Recently, anxiety had been running amok inside of me. Like if I stay in one place, I get the urge to just break into a run. I thought the answer lurked within that feeling, but I didn't know. So I kind of started to give up. If it was something I couldn't find or couldn't understand after serious consideration, maybe it wasn't important to me after all. Maybe it was better to focus on my present actions. I knew that, but why couldn't I fully accept it? It was as though there was a storm in my mind, not allowing me to. I was deep in thought, and I noticed Ozaki and Sato gleefully continued chatting. The residential area dotted with trees and brush had slowly morphed into the bright train station environment of karaoke and pachinko. I saw a group of drunk office workers standing in a circle, laughing uproariously with their red faces. We passed by the side of the group. Sato was asking Ozaki about her work and then ranted about Ozaki's boss as if it were her own. Ozaki tried to clarify that he wasn't really all that bad. I watched them walking and talking in front of me. We were about to pass by a couple of college-aged boys who were looking intently at us. My eyes met theirs, and they quickly turned away. My two friends were too busy talking to us. If I hadn't been there, they might have been approached. We came up to a kombini, and Sato said she wanted to buy some goods from an anime she liked. Alright. I waited while she and Ozaki entered. I pulled out my phone to check if I had any mail, and also saw that the used book I bought online hadn't been sent yet, then put my phone away. I peered into the store's window and saw my two friends laughing in front of the magazine rack. I knew they had tough work and home situations, but they just looked like normal youths now, It was kind of soothing to see them laugh. It would probably be a while. Thinking about it, I just had to hop on the train home, so I didn't really need to wait around. But as I sat there spacing out, I felt like it would be weird to just leave. I looked upward and saw that beyond the telephone wires, sprawling a spiderweb all around, was a pitch-black sky with no moon or stars. I sighed heavily, but it wasn't cold enough that I could see my breath. I then heard laughter yet again. That group from before was getting riled up again. I didn't need to concern myself anymore. Wondered if I would grow older and be an office worker like that. Is that possible? Or was I just on a completely different path? Thinking even harder, I actually never imagined I'd be here not long ago. If I'd stayed on track, I would have already graduated and be starting college soon. When I was in elementary school, I knew what age I wanted to graduate high school and what age I would start working, but now that was all out the window. It's not as though I regretted it, but my past and present selves resided in different worlds. I was like a shadow that had wandered into an alley. Oh. Hooked in on all that, I saw someone I recognized next to the video rental store next to the convenience store. Examining the characteristics and face, I immediately recognized the person as Kaneda. He always left earlier than anyone else, and I supposed he had come straight here. He had a plastic bag from the store tucked under his arm. He didn't seem to notice me as he reached for a cigarette from his pocket and stuck it in his mouth. He was my classmate, but we really hadn't spoken more than a word or two to each other. I was at a loss whether to say hi or not, and he then lit his cigarette and took out the DVD from the plastic bag. I couldn't believe it. My goodness. Scantily clad women were all over the package, an adult DVD. It wasn't a rental, but a purchase. It was used, had a price sticker of 150 yen on it. He held the case in both hands, instantly scanning the women on it. His face was expressionless. It was impossible to tell whether he was pleased or displeased with his purchase. He also paid no mind to the passerby, who turned to look at him in disbelief. It was probably best not to get his attention. Just as I decided not to say hi, I started moving away. He then looked up toward me, and we made eye contact. He said nothing, looking at me with that stoic face. I saw the picture on the DVD more clearly. I was at a loss for what to do. Hey. I forced a small smile and managed a weak greeting, but he didn't answer. He just looked at me quizzically. There was a weird silence with us looking at each other.
Ah, そうか。どこかで見たと思ったら、学校のやつか。
Yeah, that's me. Finally spoke just as I started to. I think it was the first time I'd actually heard him utter a sentence.
学校が終わったんならさっさと帰れよ。お前みたいなやつが一人で夜の街をうろうろしてたって。ろくなことにならねえからな。
Alright. He pulled the lit cigarette out of his mouth and puffed a cloud of smoke at me. I waved my hand to dissipate the terrible smell. What the hell are you doing? He didn't respond, but just snorted and kept his stony gaze on me. How rude he was. I glared at him and he squinted harder.
ごめん、待った
I heard a voice behind me. I turned around and saw that Sato-san and Ozaki-san had finished shopping.
あなたは
Ozaki noticed Kaneda and began to speak. Just then Kaneda hurried, put the DVD back in the plastic bag.
じゃあな。
He blushed red and scurried off in the other direction.
金田じゃん。絡まれてたの？
Sato inquired with a suspicious
大
look.
丈夫ですか？何か言われたりしたんですか？
Ozaki looked at me with worry. No, nothing really. That was all I could say. It was clear that he didn't think highly of me, but we really hadn't spoken enough with each other that I could guess the reason. Even with that interaction just now, it was more than we had a whole year. Well, it was possible to get on people's bad sides before you even knew. Maybe it was something like that, I don't know. I sighed. Well, let's go. I motioned for us to get moving. Ozaki suddenly crouched down and picked something up.
これなんだろう？
He had a triangular piece of flat plastic between her thumb and forefinger.
ピックだね。
Oh. Thought I was said that she looked right from the
ピッ
side.
ク？
Our pick.
ギターとかベースを弾くときに使うやつだよ。金田が落としていったのかな。
He does look like a rocker.
確かにロックっぽい格好をしてるけど、でも楽器とかやってそうな感じじゃないけどな。
Sato tilted her head in thought. I didn't know what to make of that or what she meant by her assertion that he looked like a rocker. I knew of the music genre rock, but I didn't have a good opinion of it. It was loud, violent. You know, what did it mean to be rock and roll in the context of daily life? Rock, huh? I muttered the word to myself as I recalled the look Kaneda gave me. There was no way I could have known how that single word I casually muttered would have such an impact on my life. It all began with that single phone call.
ケイ、電話よ。
My mom knocked on my door, then handed me the phone. Oh, from who? School? Well, someone I knew, they would have just called myself. They were calling our home phone. It had to be someone related to my school.
違うみたい。
I had no idea in that case. I thought it might have been my last school regarding my quitting, but based on my mom's reaction, it didn't seem like it.
八木原さんって方から知ってる？
Yagihara? I hadn't heard that name before. What could it be?
ケイも知らないのなら、お母さんが要件を聞いてあげようか？
No, it's fine, but thank you. I closed the door behind her, looked at the blinking hold button, then pressed talk again.
もしもし、対馬ケイ君だよね。
Exceptionally friendly voice came through the speaker. Yes, that's right. And you are...
俺は八木原。この名前覚えてないかな。
I can't say that I do.
そうかそうか。まあ仕方ないさ。君が送った小説の賞があったろ。それの審査員をやってたものだよ。
Ah, is that so? I breathed a sigh of relief as I replied, as this didn't seem like a terrible news at least.
俺は普段は音楽関係の仕事をしていてね。事務所が市内にあるからってことで、市の文化人として審査員に呼ばれたんだが、小説なんかまともに読んだことがないから困ったよ。それでも君の文章は俺の心に来るものがあってね、聖書に押させてもらった。結果は副賞になってしまったけれど、
Okay.
でも俺にとっては君が一番だったんだ。
Wow, I see. Well, thank you for that. I didn't expect to be complimented like that and got a little bashful. And due to that, my words may have lost some authenticity. I regretted not being able to thank him more properly, but the man who called himself Yagihara didn't lose a beat.
それでちょっと個人的に君に原稿を依頼できないかと思って
Request
ね。
some posts of you? What do you mean? What is posts? I don't understand.
今度のゴールデンウィークにうちのバンドがちょっと遠征してライブを行うんだ。急な話で済まないが、それに同行してレポートを書いてくれないか？
I don't know.
それとも何かもう予定があるかい？
I don't have plans, but you really want me to? I mean, I've never written professionally, and I don't know how much about your band, or rather, I don't know anything really.
大丈夫。そんなのはこっちも承知で頼んでるんだ。
Better that way?
いや、む
Straight
し
from
ろ
the perspective of
そ
a
れが
young
いいん
green
だ
kid
よ。
first stepping into this world?
何も知らない若者が初めてこういう世界に触れたその感情とかをね、率直に文章にして
I
ほし
could
い。
definitely see the appeal of
もとも
that.
とプロのライターに書いてもらうつもりで考えていたんだけれど、どう
Someone
も
without
それじゃ面白
biases,
くない
you
と思
know?
っていてね。そこ
Writing
で
like
審査員として読んだ
actual
君の文章を思い出したんだ。
I see.
ギャランティーはプロの相場と同じだけ渡す。もちろん旅費などの経費はこちらで負担する。受け取った文章はプロモーションに使わせてもらう。と言っても、
I get paid to travel around with a band and write about them?
無理に褒めたりする必要はなくて、純粋に感じたことをそのまま文章にぶつけてくれればそれでいいんだ。初めて何かに出会った時の気持ちというものは一度しかない特別なものだから、それが欲しい。どうだろう。なかなか貴重な体験だと思うぜ。
Well, Yagihara's persuasive passion is his totally unexpected request left me a little
君
overwhelmed.
に同行してもらうつもりのバンドもね、なかなか面白い連中なんだ。才能もある。君みたいに才能がある若者が彼らと会えば、きっと触発されるものがあるはずだ。対馬くん、人生は感動だよ。心を揺り動かす衝撃が人生を変える。君も人生を変えてみたいと思わないか？
Life, huh? Those words didn't necessarily rouse me, because I wasn't leading the kind of life I desperately wanted to change. Even if I took detours, I was still lucky to be where I was. It wasn't as though I had the struggles and pain the rest of the world did. But for some reason, Okay, I'll do it. I gave my answer. That's awesome. I sighed the moment I hung up the phone. My mouth was dry and my back with cold sweat. My pulse was racing. I could feel my heart in my chest. I took the job. It might have been better to sleep on it before accepting. I would have been gone for multiple days. I had to discuss it with my parents. Yagihara said he would come introduce himself, and I didn't think my mom would oppose, but dealing with the aftermath might be a little awkward. I wasn't thinking clearly. Maybe it was his persistent nature, or perhaps his words resonated on an emotional level. But I wasn't about to call him and back out on it. Going along backstage with some group of musicians I didn't know, and then saw in the material I read about it. It's awesome. After mulling it over, I flipped open my laptop and started researching Yagihara. I didn't catch his full name, but I checked the writing contest sign-up site and got a lot of hits from the name on there. He was more famous than I thought. Yagihara himself was a musician, and he was a member of the rock band Star Generation. Oh, I remember that name. Apparently, they were huge. Yagihara, was he a character in that? In Kira? Let's say he was. And there was one exceptional guitarist from the band who was not playing famously around them. I had no idea about the band name or the guitarist, but just based on his information, he was really incredible. I also read that Yagihara's band didn't sign to a major label, but started their own and released their material through it. At first, there was only Star Generation on the label. Now there was quite a few signed on, and Yagihara was managing the company full-time. The label's name was Star Records, and like Yagihara said, the office was in my city. The address looked like it was right by the station, and I had probably passed by it tons of times. I had no idea a company like that was just right around the corner. It at least relieved me that he didn't seem untrustworthy. Star Records. It was a public site, and looking at the rest of it, I saw the artists associated with his label. I didn't know a single one. I hardly ever watched TV, so I rarely got such information. But then again, the band seemed to focus mainly on doing live shows at venues, so I doubted watching TV would have told me anything about them anyway. I didn't know which band I would be tagging along with, but suppose there was going to be one of them here. I would be with a band who had released their own material, gathered a fan base, and were living the life of musicians, despite having never stepped foot in a music venue myself. There were pictures of a live performance. The dark room and a group of young guys stood soaked in sweat with mics and their instruments on an illuminated stage. I was about to come into contact with an unknown world. Not just interact with it, but report on it. I couldn't handle looking at pictures right now. I closed my laptop and took a deep breath. I was getting the jitters all of a sudden. Was this the feeling of becoming an adult? But dang, I had never worked before. In that sense, I was way behind Ozaki. She'd already stepped out and turned her efforts into money. I was technically her senior, yet here I was freaking out about my first real job. Kind of embarrassing. I mean, this is a pretty good job, right? For a first job, I'd imagine. Deep and anxious thought, another heavy sigh escaped me. We get to travel around with a band and write. Amazing. Better than working at the supermarket, that's for sure.
はじめまして。俺がスターレコード社長の八木原だ。
Wow, okay, you're not what I expected. 5 minutes before our arranged time, I showed up at the office and Yagihara himself was there to welcome me. The small office was in a building with many units and multiple desks and shelves were placed haphazardly. It looked like about 2 or 3 others worked there, and because it was so late, I suppose that it was only Yagihara still in the office. Pleased to meet you, I'm Kei Tsushima.
こんな時間にすまないね。
Oh, I thank you for rearranging your schedule. He wanted to meet me in person, but I had school on the day he gave me. He was busy during the morning, so we agreed to meet after I got out of class, hence the odd hour of the night. I was nervous regarding what kind of person he was, and while he was indeed the president of the company, he had his sunglasses on indoors and wore a long coat. He was clearly unlike a normal businessman. I just told myself that the music industry was unlike others, and then suddenly...
せっかくここに来てもらったんだけれど、移動しようか。
Okay.
今日は週末ってことで、近くで知り合いのライブイベントがあってね。ライブにはもう間に合わないけど、打ち上げには参加できる。取材ってわけじゃないが、ちょっと君にも見てもらおうかと思ってね。
Alright. You mean right now? It was unexpected development.
そう。ライブに出演した連中が参加するんだ。普通に生活しているとミュージシャンなんかステージの上とか人前に出ている姿ばかり見ているだろうから他の面も見てもらおうと思ってさ。
Can I really just go to something like a private party? I was nervous enough meeting Yagihara in person, so I was nowhere near ready to dive into a rock band's after party.
何も心配する必要はないよ。あ、もちろんアルコールは食
I
べた
don't
ら
know
ダメ
any
だからな。
booze.
連れて行った俺の責任が問われてしまう。
As he said that he got up to leave the office. I hadn't even given him my approval, but I found myself following him.
サンデーガールっていうバンド知ってるか？
After he told the driver of the taxi where we needed to go, Yagihara asked me,
何年か前には紅白にも出たし、いくつか曲もヒットさせてたと思うんだが。
Is that the band I'm following? I think I know the name. I knew close to nothing, but I did know them. One of their hits was the theme song on a television show, and I heard the cover by a female vocalist at the convenience stores. And I think the same song was in a gum commercial or something. I remember seeing them on some ad, and despite their name, the fact that they were all men left a weird impression on me. Oh, really? They were all men?
好きだったかい
No, not really. The vocalist was a little much for me.
そうか
Seemed to enjoy that response to Secret Fog. I haven't heard the name recently. I wondered if they disbanded. I have said it to myself.
世間はそう思ったりするんだよなテレビに出てたやつが出なくなると大体やめたとか言われる下手すると死んだと勘違いされたりもするでも
I
活動
guess
は普通に
so.
続けてるんだ
Like
ぜ
once you're out of the limelight,
新
right?
曲も書いてるしライブをやれば相変わらず
Not do
客だって呼
anything
べる
anymore.
こういうのがミュージシャンの難しいところだな
I suppose so, but why did they stop appearing on television? I started wondering why he brought them up as I inquired further.
自分たちでレーベルを立ち上げたんだよって言っても分かりにくいかなメジャーレーベルとインディーズレーベルの違いとかそもそもレーベルって何か知ってるか
Certainly hear the word often, but I'm honestly not entirely sure. When I looked up Yakihara online, I saw the word a bunch and I had a vague idea of what it meant as I read, but hearing it asked differently from someone in the industry, directly from someone in the industry, I didn't feel like confident I had the comprehensive answer properly.
ま、そうだろうな
Yakihara chuckled. It didn't seem like he felt like explaining it to me. In other words, Sunday Girl went from being pro to amateur and stopped being on television.
いやいやインディーズに所属していたって音楽で飯が食えていればプロだよレコード協会に入っている大きなところがメジャーでそうでない小さなところがインディーズってだけのことさそりゃ大手事務所に所属してメジャーレーベルと契約すれば大規模なプロモーションを打てるからデビューしたばっかりなのにメディアに出られてすぐ商売になるんだろうでもインディーズで活動していたって客を呼べてそれで食えればプロだそれにインディーズに所属したままだって実力と運が良ければメジャーと同じくらい売れることだってできる例えば
Yakihara then listed off a number of bands. There were some new I knew, or most young people, like female singers, bands that I had just heard through word of mouth, and even some famous rock bands that had success abroad that I heard through the grapevine.
彼らもインディーズだよそして我がスターレコードも世間でいうインディーズレーベルだメジャーみたいに大規模に売ってやることはできないがメジャーより自由にやれるしマージンも安い
Okay, Star Generation has to make
多少
like
は
a
プロモーション活動を
appearance,
手
right?
伝ってやれる
Yeah.
君に今回依頼する原稿も
I'm
この
pretty
プ
sure
ロモ
the
ーショ
other
ンの
char-
業
I'm
務
pretty
に
sure
使
the
わせてもらう
character made cameos in Teardrops. Oh hell, they had that whole crossover game. I see you were in the indie band Star Generation, right?
おいおい過去形にするなって一応まだ解散はしてないんだぜうちの会社のオフィシャルサイトを見ればち
Sorry.
ゃんと所属アーティストのところに記載されてる
He doesn't look familiar though, so I don't know if he was actually in there.
まあ仕方ないさとにかくね音楽業界ってのはテレビによく出て誰でも知ってるアーティストの世界だけが全てじゃない我々みたいなつつましく活動している食えてるんだか食えてないんだかわからないような連中が作り出す世界もあるのさこれから我々が向かっている打ち上げにはそういう連中が集まっている今度君にバンドの密着取材をしてもらうけどそのバンド以外の連中も見ておいてほしいんだ
Alright. I see, you mean my work is already starting. Nervously I sat up straight in my seat.
まあそう堅苦しくならないでもいいさちなみにこの打ち上げは今言ったサンデーガールのイベントの打ち上げなんだ
Huh?
彼らは俺の友人でね着いたら君もリーダーに紹介してやろう君が好みの声じゃないと言ったボーカルその人で済まないけど
He snickered as he glanced over at me. That remark kind of froze me in place and I couldn't reply. Taxi eventually arrived at what looked like a run-of-the-mill pub. Yakihara told a staff member the name of the group and she led us to a reserved room in the back. They had already been drinking and eating, I gathered, because I heard men and women alike shouting behind the door. I was so nervous I was getting dizzy. In a place where a crew of good friends were celebrating the success of their show, I, who had never even properly listened to rock music before, was about to barge in, and I'd be introduced as the reporter Yakihara hired. Furthermore, this band was famous enough to have been on TV extensively. Just imagining the implications of me was making me weak-kneed, but I told myself this was work. Came here for a job, and I couldn't look like a nervous, unreliable wreck. I had to keep it together and make a good impression. Despite still being a student, I was going to get paid for this, and that meant I was a pro. I was now determined, resolute, although tense. On the other hand, Yagihara walked in like he owned the place.
おっす、お疲れ様。
Yagihara strolled in after his casual greeting and was met with loads of yo, whoa, and other odd sounds. I followed him in and everyone turned to look at me. I told myself to act like a pro, but at the very end of the day, I had my school bag and was on my way home after class. I was obviously a student. They were all surely questioning my being here. People before me all had wild hairstyles and outfits, but fortunately I had gotten accustomed to that at school. Oh, evening, everyone. I tried to give a similar greeting like Yagihara. Perhaps they simply didn't care about me, but I was relieved no one had an odd reaction.
Yagi-san! こっちこっち!
Man sitting in the back of the table called out to him.
よー、対馬くん、おいで。
Yagihara waved me along with him as we passed by some already pretty drunk guys toward the back. I mumbled a few excuse me coming throughs along the way.
彼がサンデーガールのリーダーであるリョウだ。
Oh. He first introduced the man.
彼は対馬くん。この間話していた企画を引き受けて
The
もらったん
plan
だ
I。told you about. He then introduced me.
どうも。
Ryo grinned as he greeted me. Nice to meet you, I'm Kei Shishima. I knew this guy. I'd seen him before. The face I had seen on TV was right before me. He had a wart on one cheek. Right, that wart was kind of his trademark. Didn't know much about him, and I wasn't planning on getting all giddy because he was famous, but I was still worried a normal guy like me didn't belong here. Never got nervous during tests or presentations at school, but those were within familiar subjects. I'd never met any stars or celebrities, so I really couldn't trust myself to perform here. So I thought. I soon realized I was actually pretty collected. I could handle this. Didn't matter that I was in an unknown environment. Now, in a good headspace, I had calmed down enough to observe my surroundings. Ryo was a little heavier, with more facial hair than I remembered from seeing him on TV. His face was beet red from drinking, all kinds of accessories, but just a normal t-shirt and jeans on, and the wart on his cheek. It actually looked a lot grosser up close. He may be a star on stage, but right now he just seemed like a normal guy.
ずいぶん美形だな。記事なんか書かせるよりステージに上げてデビューさせた方がいいんじゃないの？あれ？
Oh no,
もしか
can't
して
do
ヤギさん
stage.
そういうストーリーを狙ってる？
何言ってるんだ。純粋に文章に惚れ込んだんだよ。それより今日は勝手に連れてきちゃったけど大丈夫かい？
もちろん。というかノーなんか言わせる気ないでしょ。
Ryo laughed,
よく見ていきなよ。
which he said to me. Will do, thank you. Like they came out more naturally than my initial greeting. Yagihara had something to talk to him about and sat next to him. I had no open
お
seat.
い、そこをちょっと詰めて。
I'm fine. I'll sit over there. Leo tried to get me a spot next to the scantily clad lady next to him, but I politely declined and headed for the opposite side of the room. It was obvious that Ryo was the center of attention here, with lots of bustling and chatter around him, but the other side of the table seemed more mellow. The people were just sitting quietly and drinking. Perhaps they didn't know each other. Once I started moving, I then realized that for this job, it was probably better to talk to Ryo, but I then convinced myself that observing from a distance, out of the way, wasn't a bad idea either. Mind if I sit here? The guy sitting drinking alone on the edge moved over from me and I sat down. With me out of the picture, snacking on some stuff on the table, things really started bustling with Ryo at the center. Yagihara, now with the big smile and the beer, bumped shoulders with Ryo as they both laughed out loud. His laughter permeated the room, likely from his conditioning as a vocalist. Two young girls then approached Ryo and one pulled a wallet out of her bag as they spoke to him. Ryo nodded heartily, then took the white wallet from her as she handed him a pen and he then signed her wallet. He finished his autograph and moved in close to the girl and gave her a kiss on the cheek. He didn't resist at all. After that, the other girl handed Ryo a handkerchief.
これ君が頼んだんだろ
Who's this guy? I turned to the side and the guy next to me handed me a glass of tea that he took from the waiter. Oh yes, thank you. Nodded my head slightly as I took the glass and looked back toward Ryo. He had the girl in his arms and was kissing her on the lips this time. Oh. It was quite bold doing that in front of
びっ
everyone.
くりしたかい
I sat watching Ryo and the girl in awe as the guy next to me leaned
あの
over.
人はねいつもこうなんだ外で出待ちしているファンの
The
女に
wife?
適当に声をかけてね奥さんもいるのによくやるよ
He rolled his eyes as he ate a piece of chicken and washed it down with a beer. Which meant, were the other girls here not musicians or staff, but just regular fans? On closer inspection, I saw that the members of Sudden and Girl all had girls fawning over them, laughing at the jokes. Whereas other places in the room just had groups of guys chatting and drinking. So did the girls only flock to the famous rockers, and the other guys here were just left out to just drink with one another? I saw the Akihara had moved away from Rio and was in intense conversation with one of the guys off to the side. The group of guys looked like they were having fun in their own way, but the Sunday Girl members had women all around them laughing and shouting. The woman didn't even glance at the other guys. The woman who had her wallet signed got up, maybe used the restroom, and passed behind me. She had her bag out to her side, bumping into me. Oh, sorry. I tried to move out of her way, but she barely glanced at me as she passed by silently. It was like she was a different person with Rio. I may as well have been a rock on the street with the way she looked at me. I wasn't even mad. I was more of just surprised. The world seemed so raw to me. I had no idea, as there had never been anyone like this around me. It was basically culture shock. If you were famous, even if you weren't handsome, you could basically be a king with a harem. Was this the power of music? Was this what it meant to be a rock star? How was I supposed to feel about this scene? I don't really like this. I'm actually a little jealous. It's the power of music. I don't really like this. I just couldn't see myself ever liking this. Maybe I thought as much because I wasn't crazy about Sunday Girl anyway. But I felt a bit empty seeing how being famous and successful can just change girls like that. It was proof that being famous could have that effect, but it had to mean that the famous person had a certain appeal to others as well, right? I knew that, but if I was famous and had girls gather around me like this, would I be happy? I couldn't even imagine it. If I had that status or that title, I don't think anyone would get excited about it. Which reminded me, what about that model my dad was hooking up with? My dad was a little famous lately, so that was why she was with him. Did his personality even come into play? He's rude, foul-mouthed, middle-aged, selfish, arrogant to top it off. Well, if she was actually in love with him, that would be an even bigger problem for a Tsushima household. Phrasing as though the only good thing about my dad was his title didn't paint my mom in a good light, though. Wait, why was I thinking about my family right now? I didn't need to ponder this stuff any longer. I quit letting my mind wander. I was going to be traveling with the band very soon, but if I had to be in places like this, I wasn't exactly looking forward to it now. At the end of the day, though, it was work, and my feelings didn't matter. But if it turned out that I simply couldn't get into rock or bands in general, what was I to do? Akihara told me I could write however I wanted, but he seemed intent on using it for promotion, so if I wrote that this elicited no reaction, I could never see myself fitting in, then wouldn't that be unusable? Writing for someone else was going to be hard. I hadn't even started and was already sighing in exhaustion. It seemed like the guy next to me heard it and looked over at me.
つまらないかい?
No, I smiled and shook my head, but he didn't buy it.
いいんだよ。俺もこういう席は苦手だ。
Yeah, you don't really seem like the kind of guy at parties. He said it with a straight face as he gulped down his drink. What was this guy's status here? He'd been drinking alone the whole time, and his clothes and hair were normal, almost bland next to the other guys. He was giving off a subdued vibe, too. Also, it kind of seemed like as if he didn't want to talk to anyone at all. He took out a piece of chicken from the plate and popped it into my mouth. For some reason, he turned to me and intently watched me swallow my food. It was pretty tasty, so I went for another, but he continued staring. It was hard to eat like it. What's the matter?
いや、想像していたんだ。
Oh? Imagining what?
ブラジルで生まれた鳥の一生だ。暗い工場で卵として生まれ、マスクをした男たちに選別され、それからは狭いケージの
Yeah,
中
okay, now I get what he's on.
流れてくる餌をついばむだけの生活。希望もなく、愛されることもなく、祈りも通じず、心が死に絶える。
Awful.
そしてある程度体が大きくなると、無慈悲に殺され、毛をむしられ、地球の裏側まで運ばれる。
You just ruined the whole experience.
ほら、君が食べていた鳥だ。静かに佇む絶望の肉だ。部屋の向こうでは、かつて売れっ子で今は落ち目のミュージシャンが気持ちを紛らわすように女と絡んで笑い、こっちには絶望のうちに死んだ鳥の唐揚げがある。これっていい組み合わせだと思う。
Yeah, it's a great combination. I mumbled half-heartedly and looked at the fried chicken I had in my chopsticks. Me to despair? What a horrible thing to say right now. I lost my appetite, but I'd already touched it, so I forced myself to eat it. It tasted way worse than before somehow. Way worse. I'll be fine. I was getting my stuff together while my mom paced back and forth around the house. It's just for one night. I only need the bare essentials.
でも T シャツとパンツ1枚ずつしかないじゃない。もうちょっと予備があった方がいいんじゃないの？汚れたりするかもしれないし。
Said I'm fine.
そう？
What I had in my bag was my laptop, mobile battery, cables, stuff I need for writing. But for some reason, my mom thought I was planning to go on an extended trip. My packing was based on logical calculations in my mind. Even on the off chance I needed underwear, I could easily buy some, although it was an expensive item for one-time use. And it wasn't as though you could buy underwear just anywhere.
そんな機会ばっかり入れて。
She was so worried about packing, and it wasn't even her who was going. I appreciated it, I suppose, but every time she came into my room, it stopped my train of thought. Spring break started tomorrow. Most students and fortunate company workers would have about a week off and would spend it having fun. Some students at my school had to work through the week at their jobs, but others had a week jam-packed with plans and parties. I, on the other hand, was about to embark on an overnight assignment with a band I never met. The Nagano, no less. As we had previously arranged, Yagihara came and explained everything to my mom. I had explained it to her beforehand, but I wasn't confident she would go along with it. My mom had a sheltered upbringing, so it was obvious she was worried about me going to a faraway rock show. Well, it wasn't as though I knew anything about rock to begin with either. The only time I had come into contact with it was that party at the pub. What if I told her all about that? You know, Mom, that night I came back late, I was actually out at a pub with a bunch of adults I never met. There were a bunch of famous musicians there, and they were all groping these girls in front of everyone. I really thought to myself that I'd gotten myself into something crazy when I saw that unfold in front of me. And now I'm going on a small trip with that kind of rock band. Please do not worry yourself, Mother. I am more worried than you are, in fact. Yeah, that wouldn't fly. Maybe that would calm her down. Also, it occurred to me I hadn't told her that Yagihara was on the panel for the writing contest, or that I had submitted something at all. In my parents' and relatives' eyes, I was studying hard to get back on track. It was my fault I dropped out of my last school, so I had to keep up a studious appearance for them. Yet I had secretly written a story for submission and was now going on a writing job. They would probably be pretty fed up if they knew that. I was lost on what to do, and I thought about fibbing my way around it, but I made up my mind. We've been running late. We took a job offer from the owner of a music company in Yagihara. I just told her about the job. If she asked the reason, I made up my mind to tell her the truth. She didn't ask any follow-up questions.
あら、面白そうね。いいじゃない。
She said this with a smile. She didn't ask anything about Yagihara or his company, and that was a little unsettling, so I gave her one of Yagihara's business cards. I placed it on the table, but my mom hardly gave it a glance. She asked nothing further. Like what kind of writing I would do, where it would be posted, where the show was, who the band was, nothing.
よかったら K の書いた文章後で見せてね。
Smiled yet again. Alright.
ああ、そういえばコーヒー豆を昨日いただいたんだけれど飲む？
He was already on to the next subject. My attempt to explain further fizzled out. It was shocking, but then I realized that if she could watch with intrigue my dad's affair, there was no way this would faze her. After I dropped out, she had more or less given me my space and didn't probe into my business. I suppose in some way it was good that I didn't have to go into detail, but my mom's husband had left her for a younger girl, and her son was a dropout who was now going on to a suspicious job with a rock band. I'm a little sorry for her, or was I assuming too much? They told me I wasn't. Couldn't sort out my feelings about it, but I wouldn't turn back now. Whatever I did in life, I wouldn't lose sight of myself. I wouldn't cause any problems. I finished up packing in between my musings and fell asleep early that night. Woke up the next morning far earlier than usual. It was still dim outside my window. I'd been sleeping late ever since the school starting part-time school. I couldn't even remember the last time I woke up this early. I saw it was exactly 10 minutes before my alarm. It was my special skill, waking up at the same time every day, so I thought it would be hard to get up earlier. I outdid myself. Surprised at myself, I stopped my alarm before it even went off. Have you ever done that? Woken up like minutes before your alarm goes off? It's pretty cool. Your internal clock. I rubbed my eyes as I went down to the kitchen. I ate some plain bread, yogurt, and a banana. In the silent room, save for the sounds of my chewing, I noticed I was already nervous. I checked my messenger bag one last time before getting ready and leaving the house. Oh, the sun's so bright. The rising sun shone at an angle on the hazy town, giving it a vivid appearance. A little chilly in my thin jacket, but the biting cold from before had already passed. I was heading to Nagano, and even there, the forecast was warm around noon. What I was wearing might be too hot. Summer was coming. I stepped on my bicycle with the weight of my shoulder bag digging slightly into me. We were supposed to meet at a convenience store on the highway. I saw a white van in the spacious parking lot of the store and a group of people behind it loading in things from the back. Was that it? I saw what looked like a guitar case. Was it better to approach them myself, or maybe it was better to call Yagihara first? I couldn't help being cautious meeting people for the first time. I was sure that was the group, but if I was wrong, that would be so embarrassing, and having Yagihara introduce me would be so much smoother. Just as I pulled up my phone, someone stepped out from the other side of the van. Black coat, flashy hair with sunglasses. That was undoubtedly Yagihara. I breathed a sigh of relief and walked my bike toward him.
おはよう。時間ぴったりだね。
Even early in the morning, Yagihara emanated nightlife. Good morning. Came by bike, but I doubt there's anywhere to park yet.
そうだね。大輔、ちょっといいか。
Yagihara called out to a guy smoking a cigarette in a sweater and cap. He turned towards
彼、
us.
自転車で来たんだけれど、君のアパートの駐輪場に置かせてもらってもいいかい？
ああ、いいっすよ。
He rubbed his hairy chin as he lightheartedly agreed.
彼が君が同行するバンド花鳥風月でギターをやってる鳥居大輔。こちらが君らのレポートを書く対馬くんだ。
Yagihara stood between us and introduced us to one
どう
another.
もよろしく。思ったよりも若いね。いくつ？
I'm 18.
じゃあ学生さんかな。
Yes, it's nice to meet you. I bowed my head as I shook Daisuke's outstretched hand. I remembered seeing the name Kachio Fugetsu on the Star Records artist list. So it was this band. Yagihara kept the band name a secret until today. He wouldn't tell me when I asked, saying that having no biases would be best. But I was worried about being completely clueless, so I researched the bands on Star Records and checked their posts, trying to narrow down the possible ones I'd be going with. Another band had an event up north where we were heading, so I was sure that would be the one and researched them further. But alas, I was mistaken. I hadn't read anything more about Kachio Fugetsu, so I really didn't know nothing. I really knew nothing. I didn't remember seeing that Kachio Fugetsu was going to be playing in Nagano, though. Maybe they forgot to post that? I was a little taken aback.
ちょっとみんな手を止めて集まってくれ。紹介したい人がいるんだ。
The band members all gathered around.
彼はドラム担当の木戸。
Guy with shoulder-length black hair gave me a quick head
彼
bow.
女はベース担当のめぐる。
どうも。
Pretty girl, still half asleep, indifferently greeted me.
彼はキーボード担当のマサト。
いや。
He had flashy glasses on and seemed more chipper than the others. Pleasure to meet you all. I bowed somewhat deeply as I returned their greetings.
一人足りないな。おい、花井。
The guy looked side to side as he called out, but there was no
あ
reply.
いつ運転席で寝てましたよ。
Daisuke spoke first.
まったくしょうがねえな。
Yagihara chuckled. I can meet him after. I spoke up, feeling guilty about the situation when
そう大きな声を出さないでくださいよ。
we heard a voice from inside the car through the open back door, and it looked like someone was shuffling out of the driver's seat. Then the guy, apparently named Hanai, came before us. Oh!
君は
Is that guy? We both froze for a second because we had literally met at the pub the other night.
どうだ、驚いたろ。この間酒の席で偶然顔を合わせた同士が実は今回の旅の道連れだったとは。何か特別なことが始まる予感がしないか？
Sure, yeah. Yagihara grinned, quite pleased with himself. I honestly wasn't that surprised and just kind of murmured. And I had no response, he just grimaced. Everyone went silent, and the awkwardness blanketed everyone like a sudden rainstorm.
あの日急に思いついたことだったからちょっとうまく通じなかったかもしれんな。
Yagihara laughed it off and continued.
こちらがリーダーの花井コレキオで、こっちがライターの対馬圭君だ。 ほら、挨拶をしたまえ。
Basically push us together. Hi.
ないです。
Call me Hanai. Hanai painstakingly bowed his head. I'm Tsushima. Couldn't make my greeting any less awkward. Alrighty, well I think I'm gonna call that. So that was Musicus, available right now on Steam and MangaGamer.com. It's on sale for like $40-ish, $44.99 normally when it goes off sale. Yeah, I hope you all enjoyed it, and if you do, leave a like and subscribe for more visual novel content, and I will see you all next time. Have a good day, everybody, and as always, take care.